I don't see Caitlin yet. So is that? Oh, she's in person. Oh, I'm sorry. I was waiting for the video to come up. There we go. All right, good. Good evening, everybody. I'll call the Water and Sewer Board meeting to order. Brenda, if you take roll, that'd be great.
Board Member Boriski.
Present.
Board Member Freeman. Board Member Jolie.
Present.
Board Member Mercier.
Present.
Board Member Ridley.
Present.
Councilmember Russell.
Present.
Councilmember Ward. Mayor Sierra. Vice Chair Habernick. Chair Moore.
Present.
And I'm going to go back to Board Member Freeman.
Present.
Oh, and the mayor just jumped online.
If I'm a second to show up. There we go. Wonderful. All right, thank you, Brenda. Start with next up, item 3, approval of the minutes from our September 10th meeting. Can I get a motion to approve?
I move to approve. I second.
Any discussion, edits, etc.? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. Number 4 is the public forum. Brenda, do we have anyone from the public tonight?
We do not.
All right, thank you. Then we'll move into new business. Got some good topics tonight. We'll try to keep a good pace. Peter's putting a hard stop on us at 6:15, so we will do our best to honor that. Start with the 5A. Peter, I believe that goes to you or Sarah?
I will be presenting all the items tonight since Peter's joining remotely. So this first item here is, so there's a series of code amendments. They're the first 3 items on the agenda. This first one is revisiting the code changes that were made back in July of 2023 when we began the initial potholing investigation to find lead service lines in the service area. We indicated that we would reevaluate the interior inspection language in the code that we have adopted back in July 2023. So that is what's before you tonight. So quick summary of what we are refining: the interior inspections for the customer side service lines. So with the graphic at the bottom of the slide there, this is really just the interior inspection in the basement or crawl space where that service line comes into the house. The updated language in city code refines the inspection and access to property. It actually reverts back to the old language that was in there previously, which allows utility staff access to the interior of the home for meter inspection or meter reading. And then we've added some language around exterior inspections. That's access to the property on the property owner side to verify what the service line material is. And then for interior inspections for the service line, that would only be if an exterior inspection was not possible. And then it would maintain, again, that access for meter reading and meter repair or maintenance. And then to gain access for an interior inspection of a service line, it would require consent, notification and consent to the customer prior to that. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So once all the meters are moved outside, there would be no reason for staff to go inside a home?
That's correct. And that would be our intent, although it's a longer program, to move all the meters outside.
Right. And so one of the things in the packet, it talked about the 3,000 lead service lines is what we're expecting. In all of the potholing that you've been doing, is there any indication that that could be different than
there's indication that there could be less,
Okay.
that we would be around the 2,300 number of lead service lines in the system.
Okay, thank you.
I do have a question. Was there any reason why when they came to change out the meter, they didn't move everything then?
So couple reasons. One, if that contractor is not, it's not in that contractor's scope to dig a meter pit and move that meter outside. So if there isn't an existing meter pit, there wouldn't be the ability for that contractor to do that. If you end up having a lead service line, the meter pit gets installed at that time when the lead service line is replaced, and then the meter can get moved out either at that time or just after.
So when do they plan to start working on that, when they don't have the meter pit and they don't have all the other stuff?
So if it'll be after, if it's a non-lead line, service line, that will follow after the lead program. So that's still several years away.
Okay. I was really hoping to get ours done.
Which we can do that. We can put it on a list and we can start moving through that. It's just not something we've programmed at this point.
Any further questions?
Mayor, if I may chime in for just one thing on this. So I just wanted to just close the loop on this, that when we brought these last year, there was some discussion around this access piece. And at the time that those were approved, we committed to bringing this back to refine this language. This is us following through on that commitment, is finally doing what we said we would do when we originally past season. I just wanted to make sure that that you knew that we were closing the loop on what was requested way back when we first approved these.
That's good. Can I get a motion to approve item 5A as written?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oh, opposed? All right, motion carries. Wonderful, thank you. And just continue, 5B.
Okay, so this item is to refine the language in code around the utility side service line ownership. It's related to curb stops. So curb stops as written in current code are owned by the property owner. Most customers don't know what that is or where that is, and they don't know that they need to maintain these curb stops. But that is the shutoff valve on the service line between the main and the street to the home that allows either the customer or utility staff to turn off water so that they can regulate flow from the distribution line into the home. So we've defined the curb stop in the code now with these proposed amendments. But as we are going through and replacing lead service lines and installing meter pits, there are also shutoff valves being installed in those meter pits, which does not then require a curb stop for those customers. So the refinement then is to where there is a shutoff valve in the meter pit, we would change the ownership of the utility-owned service line. The portion of that would be from the main to the meter, and we would abandon or remove the curb stop, and then the customer would own from the meter to that first valve or into the home.
So can I ask a question? Or you're not there yet?
I can take a question if you like.
So the curb stop, is that where some shutoffs for the water supply in the house are? So if you had a water issue, you would probably turn the water off in the house at the curb stop? Or is that separate from the water shutoff?
That's separate from the water shutoff inside the house.
Okay.
I have a question as well. So who's going to be, so as far as the cost goes, the residents will be responsible for that, correct?
So currently residents are responsible for the cost of maintaining the curb stop. That's it right now.
So, but who controls the shut on and shut off of?
So we can shut off using the curb stop if there's a shut off for non-payment, or if that's requested by a homeowner for some reason, like they have an issue on their service line, then we can shut off.
If I can jump in on this. So the curb stop is manipulated with a valve key. No one should have a valve key except for us at utilities. So we're the ones that operate the curb stop. The valve inside the house is how someone would shut the water off to their house. So this is really the city's way of controlling water to that house or not. And we're just moving that valve that requires from a valve key into the meter pit as we're moving towards new meter pits.
So basically the meter is controlling the valve, but then
There's a valve in the meter pit.
Yeah,
So
it's just in the pipe. It's so there's a riser pipe that comes up through that comes up into the meter pit, and there's a valve on there that shuts it off. And so instead of the valve being buried underground in a curb stop, which requires a valve key, we're now just putting it where we can access it physically in the meter pit.
so my question, I'm sorry, I ask a lot of questions, but so what difference does it make in the language of here you own this, but we control that? What's the significance of that?
yes, so I'm just gonna go to the next slide because this is the updated
Okay.
summary of the updated language in city code. So we've updated the definition for curb stop, customer side service line, and the utility owned service line. Curb stops are the designation of that ownership split between the utility side and the customer side. So sorry, going back to this previous slide. So you can see that the curb stop on each of the left and the right side is where that property ownership is split. So what we're proposing to do is change where there is a meter and that meter pit has a valve to shut off that service line. The ownership would then shift to, for the customer side, it would be from the meter to the home, and then for the utility side, it would be from the meter back to the main in the street. So curb stops will still be needed if there is not a shutoff valve in the meter pit, or if there's an inside meter that customers still have their meter inside. For commercial, industrial, and multifamily customers, those properties will still require a curb stop because for those property owners, they own the entire service line, and that's also in current code. Does that help answer the question?
I'm sure once I learn more.
Okay, so
Thank you.
well, that's kind of it. I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you.
So I do have one more then. So originally, the curb stop was inside the house, and I mean, still is in a lot of,
The curb stop is along the service line, just behind the curb in the property.
oh, in the property, it's not inside the house.
Correct.
Okay.
So just to put like my personal experience with this, we had our meter freeze and burst inside the house. It had to be shut off at the curb stop. So the city had to come out and do it while the house was flooding. And had that, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically, that curb stop had probably not been touched in 50 years, 60 years. And had it failed, that failure would have been on to fix or whatever would have been on my nickel. What I now have a meter pit, and so now what it is that curb stop has moved inside to the meter pit, and so not only is it moving, the city's taking over responsibility for maintaining that ability to shut it off at the meter pit, when previously it was, they controlled it at the curb, but it was my responsibility if it didn't work after 60 years. Peter and Sarah, is that yes, thank you.
Yes, that's correct. And part of the challenge is people don't even realize that they own this valve shut off. It's
Right.
buried under the sidewalk, that if it breaks and it doesn't allow you to shut the water off to the house, then they're responsible for the $2,000 or $3,000 to dig it up, redo the sidewalk. And we're slowly moving away from that burden being on the resident to a system where the valve is inside a meter pit. And if the valve is in the meter pit, it can be regularly inspected so that it's not sitting there for 60 years, not being manipulated. And if something goes wrong, we can access the meter pit, shut it off right there, and then take this whole curb stop out of the equation and slowly evolve to, if all outside meter sets with valve shutoffs, no curb stops. But this is the first step.
I mean, this, for me, this is just a huge improvement in the infrastructure. I did it already personally. And just think it's I mean, I could see the reason why this is so critical.
And to be clear, this is a phasing. So this first part is actually just addressing the requirement of putting this curb stop. So we're not going to fix everyone's curb stop as we move people's inside meter sets to outside meter sets. We'll put in that shutoff valve, which then eliminates that need for that curb stop to manipulate on that line. You might just leave it there and leave it permanently open, but that's a subsequent step as we move. So this is just that first. So not everybody gets their curb stop gone out of this. It's the first step of that.
So Peter, I'm sorry, real quick one. Peter, to clarify, even if you leave the curb stop because the meter's pit has been installed, the city then's taking over ownership of that curb stop that doesn't intend to ever be touched again, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Because of where we are redefining the limits of the ownership. So the ownership for the city goes from the main to the downstream connection of the meter in the meter pit. And then from that downstream connection to the house outside the meter pit, that's the homeowners. So then there's not the confusion of the homeowner owning part of the meter, and then we have the meter pit, and then they have part of the the line again. So it just adds clarification. I think it's less unforeseen burden on our customers, and frankly, it's just a better system long term.
So my question then becomes, when do the code changes take place? When we pass this ordinance? Because not all of the curb stops are gonna be replaced by the time this changes, correct?
Correct. So this is, as Peter mentioned, is the first step. So there still will be those situations where the homeowner is responsible for the curb stop until at that time that they have a meter pit installed and that shutoff valve installed. If they already have a meter pit, then there would need to be some kind of process where we would go through and verify that shutoff valves are in those meter pits before we would say that they don't need a curb stop or do not have to meet that requirement.
If I can also add,
Yes.
so the way that the ordinance is written for these changes, it's in the alternative. It's whether or not the customer would still have the curb stop unless they have that integrated water meter shut off system. And then we define it accordingly.
So it's written in the code that way.
Correct.
And then when everybody's changed over, will the code?
Well, I mean, we technically wouldn't really need to, because at that point, everyone would be in that other alternative, that B class where you have the integrated water meter pit that has the shutoff valve. So then you're just applying that standard for what your ownership is.
Okay, thank you.
And we still need reference to curb stops because of the multifamily commercial piece. So we still need to talk about curb stops in the code. It's just the requirement won't be there for single family residential.
So would you utilize that curb stop as a secondary, like insurance to keep in the back, just in case? Or did you just completely go and remove it?
So it would still be there and exist. It essentially would serve no purpose. You wouldn't really need an emergency backup because the meter pit has a valve in it that we can easily access. If by some chance, for whatever reason, that was to fail, which would be strange and rare, I guess we could use that curb stop. But I don't foresee that really being something that we would need as a backup necessarily.
So here's the meter and here's the valve right next to it.
It's close to the curb stop, which is again why you don't need a valve next to a valve kind of thing. So you have a valve to control right next to a valve. You got two valves, they can leak. You don't need two things to maintain. It's just the industry standard is really what we're proposing here too.
Got it. Thank you.
And actually, let's go ahead and get a motion, and there'll still be a chance for further discussion. Can I get a motion for item 5B as written?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Are there any further questions or comments? All right, good. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. Moving on to 5C.
Okay, so this is the last code amendment item for tonight. This is a follow-up from last month where you all considered 5 variances to properties where there was a subdivision and we would have to allow for water or sewer service lines to cross adjacent properties. So further background on this, city code prohibits water and sewer service lines from crossing the adjacent lots. And then now the current development code allows for subdivision of certain residential corner lots. So those were the 5 variances that were approved by the Water Sewer Board last month. And the recommended code changes would allow for the water and sewer services to cross subdivided lots and eliminating the need for a property owner to seek a variance from the Water and Sewer Board. So the proposed amendments affect the 2 sections where it talks about how water and sewer service lines can cross properties. It allows for that private water and or sewer line to cross adjacent properties with an easement dedication, and then it would restrict any structures from being built on the easement, and the easement would be reported and follow the property. So this again allows for that subdivision of corner lots. So the example shown on the slide, there's the red shows the proposed property lot lines, the new lot lines. And then the green, which is mostly shown on lot 2 on the left, shows that an existing sewer line would be abandoned. There would be a new sewer line on lot 2 that would connect back into the alley. And then for lot 1, the sewer line would have to follow that property line down towards the street, and then in a private easement would cross lot 2 in order to connect to the sewer line in the alley. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
So do we know if there will be any unintended consequences of this change? Because this was affected by Code Next, which was an unintended consequence for that.
I wouldn't anticipate it. So any of these subdivisions go through our review process. So it's reviewed by our engineers to ensure that an easement is in place, the easement is wide enough for the private line to cross the adjacent property, and make sure that connection is correct to either the sewer main or the water main. So I don't anticipate any.
The other question that I have, because I know this was brought up last month, there were a couple people that said it wouldn't be a problem. But what if public service decides not to give them gas or electrical connection? And we've done this and they get to this point, I mean, they go ahead and develop and then they end up not being able to get gas and electric.
So I think that's actually, I think that's just outside the scope of what we would be, what we have control of. We have control of water and sewer. And so as a developer subdivides, it's their responsibility to make sure that they can do everything that they can do in order to subdivide according to the regulations. And so how they interface with Excel on electric and gas really isn't something that we would have any kind of control or influence over. It's really about us taking care of the issue of having the water line be able to cross and then the sewer line be able to cross. And the way that this is occurring, we have water lines that cross other properties all the time. So if you think about city ditch, when we pipe it, there's easements all over the place where it's crossing other properties. And so this is a very, very common practice. The issue that's happening here is in those situations, we are the holder of the easement, the city is. And this doesn't make us the holder of the easement. It makes the adjacent neighbor the holder of the easement so that each party can have the access for water and sewer. It's much like a common driveway. If you got a common driveway into 2 properties and there's an easement that both property owners have for access, they each hold an easement so that they both can access. This is them holding easements with each other so that they can make this completion of the water and sewer connections.
I appreciate that, thank you. And I know that's not the concern, nor does the Water and Sewer Board have control over that, but I'm asking, is there liability to the city if we go ahead and approve this and then they get so far in their building project, and then cannot get, I mean, I don't know how the process works, if they have to have, electrical and gas permission before they start, I don't know.
I would defer to Deputy City Attorney McDermott on that.
Thank you, Director Van Ryn. So I believe that to obtain a certificate of occupancy, gas and electric need to be running in the property. In terms of whether the city would face any liability, if they went through this whole process with subdividing and they weren't able to get those necessary requirements to obtain their certificate of occupancy. I think that would be a hard pressed argument, because I mean, it would be a negligence claim against the city, and the city generally has immunity under Colorado law for such actions.
Okay.
Excuse me, I think
I'm done.
I have a physical question. What's the probability of these pipes going through this 90-degree, especially considering this sewer line? What is how does that increases probability of that line needs services more frequently or breaks down?
So the line that you're seeing on the drawing shows a 90-degree turn. When they actually construct these, they construct them with a 45 or a sweeping bend, which allows for the flow to make a gradual turn around. It's just as it's shown on the drawing, we show them as just 90-degree lines, but we don't do a 90-degree sewer bend line.
Okay.
How deep are they?
I think he said 18-inch last time.
Okay.
I think he said it was like about 18-inch of difference between the two lines, but I'm not sure if
Yeah, so the sewer line is generally about, if it's coming out of a basement, it's probably generally about 8 feet deep. If it's coming out of a crawl space, I would say it's generally about 4 or 5 feet deep. And then it ends up at the sewer main, which is anywhere from 10 to 15 feet deep. And the water line typically runs about 4 to 5 feet deep.
Okay. Low frost. That's all I care about.
I'll ask a question and try to answer it. But is there a scenario where the right to cross property would cause one property owner to force upon the neighboring property for this to cross their property? I think the answer is no, because these easements and whatever are done in the subdividing process, which would mean it's already one owner. And so that one owner is subdividing and permanently putting an easement on both pieces. But kind of getting to that unintended consequences question, is there some way that like subdividing occurs and then redevelopment later would allow one property owner to say, I get to cross your property, you like it or not?
I would say that there might be a scenario out there that we're not we haven't thought through. However, what I would say is what we're trying to do is we're trying to establish a common easement along that parallel road, so that there's the ability for one to cross one to cross the other. And you're right that occurs. It's a single owner who's trying to create this double property, and obviously develop it with 2 units, and they can't do that unless they get this in place. A redevelopment down the road, I think if we have those easements in place that are just there already, if they redevelop, then they at least have the easement to cross, and then they just have to rework their redevelopment to utilize that easement. Is there a case out there that might have a future issue around this? I wouldn't say no, because we haven't necessarily gone down that level detailed analysis of what possibilities are out there.
It would be a like redevelopment with the developer saying, I want the easement to be moved and I believe I have the right to get it moved. In the city, you should approve me moving the easement on the other person's property.
Yeah, and I think again, I go back to the common driveway example with property access. You see those all over the place. And just because one property develops doesn't mean they get to say, well, no, I want the driveway over here and I'm going to run it right through your front yard. So I think I think that's really the analogy.
Thank you. Any further clarifying questions?
I kind of wonder about if once this original owner of the turning 1 unit to 2 units and sells the property to 2 different people that maybe they don't get along very well, and if the damage happens and the one that has access to that sewer line doesn't allow the unit 1 fix that, and then the damage become extremely more expensive, then who holds the responsibility of this? Like something to be easily fixed versus becomes exponentially costly.
I'm going to defer to Deputy City Attorney again, because I think that becomes a civil issue.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, the easement would run with the land, so even if the land is sold, the next person that owns that property, it's encumbered upon them that they have this easement and need to kind of like abide by its restrictions.
So do they get aware of that when they're purchasing the property?
It's in the title search, correct? Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. I'll go ahead and ask for a motion on item 5C as written.
So moved.
Can I get a second? Yeah, I heard. Wonderful. All right. Any further discussion before we vote? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion carries. All right. On to 5D. Looks like Chris Edelstein will be taking over.
Yes, good evening, Chair. Chris Edelstein, the Environmental Compliance Manager. Last month, we discussed 2 additional class action lawsuits that we decided to join instead of opting out. What we're proposing this evening is kind of a standard authorization, so that way we don't come back potentially 16 more times to seek your authorization to join. So the 4 that we've already decided to join in November 2023 was the 3M, DuPont, and then last month was Tyco and BASF. The next 2 slides kind of list out 16 additional companies. This is actually a lawsuit by the state of Washington. They listed 20, so the 4 that we've already decided on, 16 additional. And then on the next slide, they actually also included ABC corporations 1 through 10. So they kind of leave that open for companies that they don't know, that would have had knowledge of the dangers of PFAS chemicals, yet they still produce them and kind of hid their dangers. So it's the 16 plus other potentials that are unknown at this time. So with that, any questions?
Where do the funds go, if we get any money back from these?
It goes back into our enterprise fund, so the utilities enterprise fund.
And would it be designated for, does it have to be designated for something specific because?
It doesn't necessarily have to be designated to something specific. We don't currently have in our capital plan PFAS treatment as a project that we're seeking. So it would then go back into the water enterprise fund as fund balance that could be used for that, either the study of it, the design of it, or we could use it for other capital projects as well.
Okay, thank you.
I have a concern that I would like to talk about it, and that is that I think it is our job to be conscious about what people are drinking. So I was completely against the fact that we take that money. I think we should all stand and fight for this concept that they're toxifying us. Yeah, they're big corporations, and because they eliminate us, and then therefore they're making the cases much smaller. So if you're getting this money, which is, I think, is pennies for dollars and thousands of dollars that they get, they're just making their cases stronger so they can continue doing this just thing. So I think if you're getting that money, then at least let the consumers know you're getting toxified through these sources and you don't have the protection and we can't do anything about it. So we highly recommend get yourself some reverse osmosis so you can at least make yourself healthy. These are your choices, make an educated choice. So I think if that money is that was earned for that purpose, it should go to the consumers so that we can educate them. Use it for educating them and giving the choice to them. This is what's happening and we can't do it and we chose to opt out of that. And now the ball is in your court and you make a decision. That how do you want to invest that money? Do you want to really invest $300 for the life of you having a good water? I think that should be the case instead of just we continuing and sweeping it under the rock and everybody moves on. And DuPont has been doing that since the Second World War. So
So
when we gotta stop it.
So we can't actually, so we agree with you that we want to educate our consumers, which is why when we do testing, we let the consumer know about the testing. We let consumers know about PFAS and the dangers of PFAS. We've changed some of our treatment processes, which has actually lowered our PFAS levels coming out of the plant, which we're seeing some good results out of that. I think the challenge is, as a society, these chemicals are still being put in products every day, still today. And for the last couple of years, we have been at the state capitol trying to get these banned out of products. And there are other lobbyists, there's other lobbying groups who get carve-outs for various chemicals. And so until we as a society decide that we're going to ban these outright, we're going to continue to deal with the challenge of they will still be coming to us. Not only that, I'm sure most, if not everybody in our service area has some kind of building material, product, clothing, pan, something that has some form of PFAS that was created over the last 5, 10, 20 years. And so we can use some of this money for education, but I think the issue is what we've talked about is the idea that if the money's not available at the end because they just go bankrupt, let's try and get something so that we can actually use some of that money. And so instead of coming back 16 times and going through that same rationale that we've talked about here, that I think the board has understood why we're trying to do it this way. We're just saying that if it's looking like the same type of authorization as the other ones, or the same type of settlement as the other ones, that we'll just take the same approach of we'll opt in and take as much money as we can potentially get, because a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. I think that's the real thing of what we're trying to do here. And so it's just trying to streamline process, because we've gone through this a couple times and have come up with a standard response to it, realizing that this is a much bigger issue than what water providers and wastewater providers can deal with.
I understand your position, Peter, with that. I'm just saying that once we get that money, why don't we designate some of that money toward that informing our consumers and putting that there and letting them know that you can have this option, use it for the consumers instead of they have a choice. I'm not saying don't get the money. Okay, get the money, I understand. I'm saying just dedicate some of that money toward educating the residents.
And that's something as this money comes in, which again, there's no guarantee we're going to get anything. But if some of this money comes in, we can bring that kind of an idea back to the board and see what your thoughts are.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you.
All right, can I get a motion for item 5D as written?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. 5E. Adam Marquez, you can take it from there.
Yes, thank you.
Come on over, Adam.
Hi, everyone. I'm Adam Marquez. I'm engineering supervisor with utilities, and this item is the Allen Water Treatment Plant Electrical Site Improvements Project. So the background of this project is we have two large capital improvement projects scheduled to begin construction next year. The first is the Phase 2 office buildings, which you can see in the green square there. And then the second is our solids handling improvements project. In order to accommodate both those projects and provide new power and data feeds to them, we need to demolish some overhead power lines and replace it with new underground power, which of course would also add resiliency. We are also going to replace a power distribution system with a switchboard just northwest of the solids handling building. So as mentioned, the scope of the work is to demolish our overhead power lines that are downstream of our switchgear, replace those with underground conduits for power and data, provide new fiber optic to our office building and our dewatering building. We will install the new switchboard to replace that power distribution structure, which is quite old and not up to modern electrical code standards. And we will provide new electrical gear for the ozone, the dredge, the north reservoir and the south reservoir, as well as our centrifuge that we will be installing. So the selection process, we issued a project request to our pre-qualified electrical vendors. We had a quality-based selection where we looked at price and also qualifications and proposed approach. After receiving the initial proposals, we met with each contractor and conducted an interview and then received revised pricing. And after that process, M. Gilmore Electric was selected. They are very experienced and qualified. They know the plant electrical very well. They provided a competitive price and schedule, and they're a collaborative contractor. So the summary of the contract, it's a contract for construction. They have to maintain WIFIA compliance. So the switchboard is a long lead item. We ordered it separately from this contract about a month ago, and it's expected to arrive June 28th. So essentially the contractor will begin doing all the trenching and timping into that current power distribution system that you can see in that picture. And then once the new switchboard arrives, they will switch over to that. The total contract amount was $496,630. We're requesting a 10% contingency for a total project authorization of $546,630. Questions?
My question is about the budget. So it shows 3,200,000 negative in the negative.
On the CAS,
On the,
the contract approval summary.
So my guess is that it's related to our office improvements building, and I believe that there was 2 line items, and we discovered this back in April, and we got it corrected in August. But there were 2 line items where the dollar values were switched up. And we did basically an internal accounting change order to fix that. And so that negative number is not real. It was that the funds were applied to the wrong line items.
The invoices were applied in the accounting system to the wrong line item. So that's been moved so that what shows up in the contract approval summary is a point in time. So I think when the next month closes, that would be corrected. But as far as the line item under capital improvement projects, we would not be in the negative as far as running over in the budget. This project will also take place some in 2025, which those funds have been budgeted for appropriately.
Okay, so it shows in column C, encumbrance from an outstanding purchase order is like 5 million something, and I think that's what created this. Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay. Oh, Brenda's just showing me a note. So this also includes the on-call EINC contracts. So as you recall, we've contracted with 3 electrical contractors and 3 integration contracts, which those encumber the entire contract amount, but we're managing those to a budget line item. So all those on-calls won't reach that contract amount. We would manage to that line item budget. So when it's encumbered, it shows that full amount, but that's not our intent to spend that.
Okay, thank you.
So my question is, did you guys have to consider this switching from the being up in the ground, then taking it in the ground, is because of the building, or was it because of BFL's requirements?
It's mostly to accommodate the building and the new solids handling project. So the building's gonna have an additional 400 amps of electrical load that is not currently accounted for. And the overhead lines are also in the way physically. And so it just makes sense to provide new wires underground.
Yeah, so this is a physical infrastructure upgrade that we need to do for the plant. And instead of just rebuilding it in the wrong spot as overhead, we're putting it underground, and that will accommodate our ability to put the new administrative complex there, or building, and then the upgrades to the solids handling building. So part of this is just modernizing the electrical infrastructure on the site and doing it in a way that allows us to continue to achieve the longer term needs of the site.
I understand that. That makes complete sense to me. What I don't understand is the WIFIA's compliance.
So this is a project that's funded by the WIFIA loan. WIFIA compliance is just a piece of the contract that the contractor must follow. So they must ensure that they are paying Davis-Bacon wages, and they are following the American Iron and Steel Act requirements that are a part of the WIFIA loan. So it's an additional compliance piece for a contractor to follow to ensure that we are meeting our compliance that we have agreed to in the WIFIA loan. So it's not, the WIFIA is not dictating what the design is or any part of the actual improvement. It's just that WIFIA funds have been assigned to this project.
Yeah, I remember you got those loans from them. I just was wondering, how does that affect this project?
So yeah, a lot of our projects are WIFIA funded, and this is one of them.
So the main way this affects this project is it makes it so we can actually do this project. Without WIFIA funding, we can't do these projects. And so you'll start to see that majority of our projects that we're handling in the next few years are WIFIA compliance or some other federal or state compliance, because they're federal and state loans. In reality, the functional effect of that is Davis-Bacon wages are pretty much the prevailing wage in the Denver metro area anyways, because it is a highly competitive environment. So it doesn't have a real impact on the wages like it might in some other depressed parts of the country where wages are really low. And then American Iron and Steel is actually a provision that's just says that we're not gonna necessarily buy things that maybe come out of China, because like there's been a history of maybe valves or pipe that comes out of China that doesn't meet our the standards that we want here in the US for our water systems. And so that American Iron and Steel provision ensures that we're using American products in these projects.
Thank you, Peter.
Any further questions? All right, can I get a motion for item 5E as written?
I move the motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, we have no old business tonight. We'll move on to staff's choice. November meeting date.
Yeah, so we just have one item just one item to discuss under staff's choice. So as we mentioned last month, Veterans Day falls on November 11th. The council meeting will be moved to November 12th, which would be our second Tuesday in November, and typically when this meeting would be held. So we wanted to put some proposed dates and times on the screen for everybody to consider, because we do need to move our meeting. So we could keep it at the existing time, and the council members on Water and Sewer Board could leave early as long as we have a quorum, and that is 6 people. We could also begin earlier on November 12th, which would then allow time to finish our meeting and then the council members to attend the council meeting. The other options that we listed out were Wednesday, November 13th at 5, or Thursday, November 14th at 5. We do need to have the meeting this week, as we need to take certain items to the council meeting on the 18th, which is that following Monday.
Let me ask the council members if options 1 and 2 are viable options for you all. It's a long night. Are you willing to entertain keeping it on Tuesday?
I was actually trying to look to see what our proposed agenda for the 12th looks like. I actually think the 12th is probably going to work best for me. So starting at 4 p.m. on Tuesday probably makes the most sense for me. But I won't speak for Member Russell or Member Ward.
Rita, do you care to offer? Okay.
I'm okay with Tuesday, November 12th. Mary, you can cut the agenda down.
I was thinking, yeah.
We don't have to go so late.
We currently have one item on the agenda for the 12th, so.
Just don't add any more.
There you go.
I'll volunteer my individual opinion. I'd like to keep it on Tuesday, whether we start early or not. I don't care. Do board members have any strong objections to Tuesday, or want to really push for another day?
I prefer that the council have their first speak, because they're gonna have a long day, so I will adjust my schedule for whatever fits to them.
Is everyone good then with Tuesday, the 12th at 4 p.m.? Does that sound good to everyone's wishes?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. We don't have to vote on that, I don't believe. We'll just do the meeting Tuesday at 4 p.m. All right, last agenda item is just board members' choice. If anyone needs to raise anything, floor is open. All right, hearings. Oh, go ahead.
I do have a question. I was wondering, since the meters has changed, I was looking at my own set of bills from 2018. So I just was looking at it, And what raised a question in my mind was, with these new meters, do you guys have any awareness that what is in the algorithm? Because some of the stuff, like I look at, for people like me, because I have very consistent
Water
usage. And so when I look at it, and I look at all the way from 2018 and coming all the way to now, it just, first of all, the amount for me, is gone up 50%. And I'm on a drip system. So to me, it's like, okay, why is the price has gone up 50%? So then brings out the question, what is the algorithm they're using? Do they automatically add a part of the formula? Here's is May, now automatically people are gonna, or in June and July, the plants are bigger, so they're gonna water more, or because it's, it's hotter, so therefore we're gonna add this to the formula, we're gonna charge them more. Or because I look at I haven't had time to put this in a graph form, and I just look at it visually. I like to do that, to just visually demonstrate that. I just think there is something really majorly wrong with the readings.
One thing I was just thinking about when you were talking is the fact that you need to look at how much water you have used by thousands of gallons. Is that correct? Because council has raised fees 4.5% a year, starting back, was it in 2020? Oh. Okay, and we were actually raising fees before 2020 also. So I think to compare 4.5% per year, plus there was then added a administrative fee.
So there was not an administrative fee added. There was a capital investment fee added. That was a $15 fee. And that's what's allowed us to be able to secure these loans, is because we had to show the people loaning the money that we had the money to be able to pay it back. And so that capital investment fee is a new cost that wasn't on the water bill. Prior to 2020, I believe it was 2012 was the last time that the water fees had been raised. It was either 2012 or 2014. So it had been 6 or 8 years since they had raised. The sewer fee, when I first started in 2018, went up by 7%, and then we stabilized that. It went up, I believe, 7% in 2018 or 2019, and then 7% in 2020. And then we stabilized that at 4.5% per year to make it consistent. And so you're seeing the bill go up. Yes, that's true, but that's because we're collecting the money to be able to invest in the systems. And much like, much like a credit card company or a car lender won't loan you $50,000 for a car if your income is too low. We're a big borrower because we have so much need that we had to make sure that we had the revenue stream to support the payback of those loans. And that's what, in the background, we've been working with our financial modeler and our financial analyst of why we have a 20-year financial model that helps us balance the amount of loan in order to execute the projects, but also have the revenue to pay it back, but also have money to be able to continue to invest in the system. And so this has been the transformation over the 4 years. So yes, you're going to see your bill has gone up, but that's also why we compare it to a number of utilities nearby, is because we want to make sure that we're not, getting way out of whack with our bill. And every year during the budget process, we go back and we say, here's what the total bill looks like in comparison to all these other entities around the Front Range. And so there's no other algorithm in there that's changing something in the meters. I mean, the meters are just new meters. They just measure the water better. And so and I mean, there's not someone out there that's, creating that's doing something wrong. It's us. We're buying meters that are the most accurate meters so that we can accurately reflect what people are using from a water perspective, so we can charge them the appropriate amount of money so that we can actually continue to pay for running a utility.
What I'm seeing is that the increase of water is from the 2022, 50% increase. So what I'm trying to figure out is that how is that 50%? I mean, I'm only looking at mine, not in the voice of I'm trying to pay less. What I'm trying to, it's like this, even though if you add the $15 fee and all of that, it still doesn't make sense where it's raised. I see a pattern in it. So that pattern has to come from somewhere.
So what we can do is, and so I think what's best on this is to actually sit with you on your bill and maybe look at what was used back in 2022 and do that comparison. It is also the 5th hottest summer on record. People were using more water than even drip systems. I mean, I have a drip system and I used a lot of water. And so people were using more water this year. But without knowing the specifics of your usage pattern and your bill, it's hard to be able to answer anything in this meeting. So can we offer to sit with you and go through your bill and see if we can sort out what's going on with the numbers? Is that something that would be helpful?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Was that if this is happening to me, how many people are having this kind of issue? That's what my concern was, you know. Yeah, that would be lovely.
There are other people that are having this concern, and what we do is we sit with them and then we explain it, and then they walk away and they realize, okay, that makes sense. I would say it's a small amount of people that are having this concern. The vast majority of people haven't raised an issue with this concern. But anytime someone does, we sit with them and walk them through it. And if there's something that's not right, we'll make the change.
Marjan, I'd like you to consider whether you would like to report back to the board, however your experience turns out. So if you're willing to share, if you're willing to share, that'd be fun to hear if, it all made sense or if, something else stood out to you. Very good. Any other? Good, thank you. Any other agenda item or any other issues the board wants to raise? Great. I will adjourn the meeting. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks all.